So in the last video, I discussed a bit about burnout in the healthcare field and how it really is not your fault as an employee, as a doctor, as a nurse, as a hospital staff worker for wanting to leave. The rates of depression amongst male doctors, as an example, is 12%, and amongst female doctors is as high as 20%, with depression rates even higher amongst resident physicians and medical students at a whopping 29%. Doctors have the highest suicide rates amongst any profession, about double the general population. 300 doctors die by suicide every single year. That's almost one every single day. Doctors hide their pain out of fear that it will affect their employment. Now, what the heck does this have anything to do with money and financial wellness? Well, quite a bit. Let's retrace who goes into medicine. Who wants to become a doctor and who ends up becoming a doctor? You already know the answer to this. It's that person that studied a lot during elementary, middle, and high school, the person that skipped out on partying, who made sure that they took every AP class imaginable and aimed for straight A's on all of them, the person who spent any spare time that they had to do volunteer work. And who were they in college? The ones that asked plenty of questions in class, the ones that focused on getting a top-notch MCAT score. And for their physical prime fun decade, their 20s, throw that on the back burner. These doctors are the ones that couldn't make it to their friends' weddings, the ones who decided to get into $200,000 worth of student loan debt, the ones who decided that spending 80 hours a week studying and working for $10 to $15 an hour for 3 to 8 years during residency was the way to go. The ones who went into work sick mentally and physically because patients and their team members needed them. The ones who spent countless days and nights away from their children and significant others, the ones that postponed having children altogether. You pursued a transcendental calling of something greater than yourself, to serve others. You put yourself second. Your mental health came second, your physical health came second, and a lot of times you were even told that your family had to take a back seat. Med school admissions committees know this. So why do you think it's so tough to get into medical school? So fast forward to when you finally become a doctor. You're seeing your patients, making diagnoses, prescribing treatments, motivating folks, working with your team, and you are finally making a decent salary for your lifetime of uncompensated sacrifice. And yet, something huge seems amiss, and work is not what you thought it would be. Your patients argue that you don't seem to spend enough time with them and that you don't seem to care enough, when administrators tell you that you only get 20 minutes per appointment to address all their complaints, document the visit, order the tests and labs and medicines, verify the laundry list of medications that the patient is taking, clinically reason through all their symptoms to come up with multiple diagnoses, navigate the inefficient, cumbersome, sludge-filled quagmire that is the electronic medical record, and make sure that you don't miss out on ordering their preventive cancer screenings and vaccines, because if you miss something, you can get sued. Then you have patients demanding that you give them XYZ study or medicine, some of them lashing out at you, but if only you were allotted sufficient time to hear them out and find out what their true concerns actually were. Then after 9 hours a day of this, repeat it 20 times for every single patient that you see, when the sun has set, you look at your messages box and realize that you have at least an additional 2 hours of uncompensated work that you need to get through, so that you stay in the office until 7 p.m. Or you go home and at 5 p.m., but you work an additional 2 hours of bedtime charting, again, unpaid, rinse, repeat for the next 35 years. You bring up in meetings that this is unsustainable. You beg for more time with your patients. You beg for the administrators to hire more staff, but are told instead that for the patients that you have, staffing is sufficient. You ask, if that's the case, how come you work an extra 10 hours of uncompensated time per week just to stay afloat? You ask for help with addressing all the patient messages. Your administrator high fives you and hands you a sandwich during the twice-a-year employee appreciation luncheon. Perhaps they have also said, oh yeah, we're trying to hire more staff, but no one seems to want to work here. Or, yeah, we have trouble finding qualified applicants. For one reason or another, you always feel like there just isn't enough of you to go around. And then your administrator signs you up for the mandatory wellness seminar and asks you to meditate and do yoga. And when you ask for improvement in the efficiency of the workflow, instead of putting together a committee of frontline doctors and nursing staff to discuss simple, concrete ways on how to make the process more effective, your administration, well-meaning as they may be, outsources this to some expensive consulting company that does not have any direct patient care experience, come in and tell you absolutely useless ways to go about with your patient encounters, leaving you dumbfounded and confused as to who is helping who in the first place. Now, let me be clear. I'm still dependent on my paycheck, so I dare not speak ill of my own employer. So the examples that I gave don't necessarily apply to me and are definitely not representative of views of or toward my own employer. And this is the problem. Most folks won't speak up about their own employers because so many medical staff are shackled to their six-figure student loans and our obligations to our families to make a living. We won't speak up about our depression, about suicidal ideations, out of fear that this will get brought up every single time we look for a new job. So most folks suffer in silence. They let it out on their loved ones. They have nowhere to turn to. So yes, this dependence on a drug called a salary is silencing us. So I will speak about your employer for you so that I don't have to talk about my own. Thank you very much to my friends who have let me discuss how their employers are slowly eroding away their sanity. So I am sounding the alarm on the state of primary care and medicine in general for the entire country. I dare you to tell me that what I've said does not apply to you, whether you're working in New York, Chicago, Philly, Houston, or anywhere else in America. You have studied your whole life to enter a meaningful and sacred profession, the healing art of medicine. And now that you are finally in the career of medicine that you have dreamed of since you were a kid, you suddenly realize this destination is not what you have imagined whatsoever. Now, you have this inner conflict of, oh crap, what do I do now? You don't want to quit. You feel that people need good folks like you. You want to provide your valuable services, but you also know that you better put on an oxygen mask before you pass out. So here's my 3-step plan and my suggestion for potential solutions. I don't want to just whine about this. Step 1, check yourself first. How are you? Remember that there are forces way beyond your control as to why your job is destroying you. So I'm no way saying that the poor status of your mental health or that burning out is your fault. Quite the opposite, actually. The problems in our professions aren't going to be resolved overnight. We can't hope our way into the situation of American healthcare getting better. If you are finding it to be too much, take some time off if you can afford it. Days, weeks, months if you need to. You are your number one priority. Don't let your job tell you otherwise. You are dispensable to your employer. Any employer can replace you once you're gone. Talk to a therapist if you think in the tiniest bit that this might help. Trust me, it does. Once you start realizing that you have to take care of yourself first, that you should be your number one priority, not your patients, not your boss, not your profession, you will become more at peace. Step 2, bring up concerns to your administrators. And if you are a frontline staff member who has concrete ideas to make things better, ask to be on a committee. Whether that is a committee to improve the electronic medical record or a committee that helps us streamline any part of the patient care process. Chime up. Uncomfortable conversations now bring comfort later. Step 3, stop relying on your institution's retirement plan. Think about the incentives here. Do you think your employer wants you to retire? They want to have you work for them as long as you possibly can. It takes too long and requires too much money to recruit, train, and get a new employee up to speed. I cannot emphasize this enough. Learn to be financially literate. Learn how to make your money work for you. Trading time for money is not sustainable forever. You need to learn how to make money while you're sleeping. Learn stocks, learn real estate, learn how to make passive income. When you have saved, invested, and grown your wealth to an amount that is roughly 25 times your annual expenses, you can pretty safely say that you are financially independent and no longer have to rely on your job to feed you. Now, keep in mind, I'm not asking you to save 25 times your annual expenses, but calculate that number first. Let's say you want to spend $80,000 a year when you retire. You'll need $2 million. Play with the investor.gov compound interest calculator to see how much you will need to save per month to get there, based on what you already have. You can assume the S&P 500 will continue to give you 7 to 10% annual returns on average. The funny thing is, I have asked a few of you healthcare workers what you will want to do when you finally reach financial independence. And almost unanimously, you guys have said, work way less in medicine, part-time. You doctors and nurses, tell me about your dreams and goals. For example, to be a docent at a museum, to work at a national park, to start a business, bringing to market an everyday product that people can find useful, to be a travel blogger, to be a real estate investor, to be there more for your kids and spouses. For me, I would love to coach folks to achieve those dreams through money, which is why I have started this unsponsored YouTube channel in the first place. I make a good salary and my investments have done well, so I can truly provide to you what I've learned about investing without you having to worry about what random app or service I'm trying to hawk to you. I would love for my life mission to be to empower folks to be wealthy, because I truly believe in the abundance concept that wealth can be created for all. Once you have a good amount saved and invested, you really can start to create the life that you want. You can work as much or as little in medicine as you would like. If the system can't change to work for you, then you get to choose how you want to spend your time. If you want to work to change the system, that's awesome. We definitely need to have people like you guys. Don't get me wrong. I think most administrators are good people and generally have good intentions. But I also think that a lot of frontline staff are fed up, stressed out, and are not feeling like they are being heard or taken seriously or appreciated. There are so many things wrong right now, like paying doctors and nurses in the same institution vastly different salaries depending on whether they are travelers or regular staff, and not paying necessarily on value added to the organization, but just on seniority. These two-tiered systems are going to have a massive ripple effect in the labor market. Basically, newer workers are receiving fewer benefits and lower pay, while workers who have been at the company longer and doing the exact same job are getting more. This creates animosity amongst workers, lower morale, and higher turnover. And then you are left in a death spiral with more staff shortages, increased burden on existing workers, more quitting, and onward. We're going to see a rumble in the workforce. The Great Resignation is just the beginning. I think perhaps we may finally start to see some changes. It shouldn't have to come at the expense of a massive exodus of workers, but as we have seen in the past 2 years, sometimes it takes a major force to cause some real change around here. Anyway, that's all for today, friends. Please share this episode far and wide, especially if you're pissed off and want to see some changes around your work. Subscribe for new videos about taking control of your financial life every single Wednesday, and go get investing. Thanks.